Hi, Cami.
Hi, Pat.
How you
How's it
doing
going?
today? I'm doing good. You've got lots going on, but it's all good. You can just tell it's like that spring energy we're in the northern hemisphere, so that spring energy, I can just feel like there's just so much bursting forth, emotionally, mentally, and even physically, just like, yeah. And so it's been pretty cool. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's been a lot of change happening in my personal life and just like I think in the world in general. It seems like collectively so many of us are feeling that like things are moving fast. There's a lot of shifting happening energetically and just with these larger systems. So yeah, I've definitely been reflecting on a lot of that this week. Which brings me to just what I would love to chat about today with you is something that I've been sitting with, another layer of grief that's been coming up for me, thinking about collective grief in these systems that we feel, globally and for sure nationally in the US, a lot of power structures and, the voices of authority who are in power and the grief that comes with a lot of the changes that we're seeing in those realms. Um, but beyond that, this theme of the grief for what we expected and did not receive. So
Okay.
I feel like it's very relevant, and also this layer of grief that is not so forward. When someone dies, that grief is like in your face all the time. It's,
Right.
you feel it in your body. It's all consuming. And there are these other layers of grief that are working in the background of our lives that each and every one of us have. And whether or not we recognize that or not, it's something that we all carry. So I just wanted to share a passage from The Wild Edge of Sorrow, which is this beautiful book
Yep.
by Frances Weller that I've been reading. And I have to read this book in tiny little nuggets because it's so steeped in just wisdom and just like every time I read it, I have to just sit with it and digest it for a while.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
so I wanted to share a little passage from this that I've been sitting with this week. So in this chapter, he says, this is about what we expected and did not receive. There is another gate to grief, one difficult to identify, yet it is very present in each of our lives. This threshold into sorrow calls forward the things that we may not even realize we have lost. I have written elsewhere about the expectations coded into our physical and psychic lives. When we are born and we pass through childhood, adolescence, and the stages of adulthood, we are designed to anticipate a certain quality of welcome, engagement, touch, and reflection. In short, we expect what our deep time ancestors experienced as their birthright, namely the container of the village. We are born expecting a rich and sensuous relationship with the earth and communal rituals of celebration, grief, and healing that keep us in connection with the sacred. This is our inheritance, our birthright, which has been lost and abandoned. The absence of these requirements haunts us, even if we can't give them a name, and we feel their loss as an ache, a vague sadness that settles over us like a fog. This lack is simultaneously one of the primary sources of our grief and of the reasons we find it difficult to grieve. On some level, we are waiting for the village to appear so we can fully acknowledge our sorrows. He goes on to
Wow.
say that at the core of this grief is our longing to belong. This longing is wired into us by necessity. It assures our safety and our ability to extend out into the world with confidence. This feeling of belonging is rooted in the village and at times in extended families. It was in this setting that we emerged as a species. It was in this setting that what we require to become fully human was established. Our profound feeling of lacking something are not a reflection of a personal failure, but of the reflection of a society that has failed to offer us what we were designed to expect.
Wow, that's deep.
So there's a lot there, but overall, he's bringing forward this idea that we are designed as humans to be born into a village, a tribe, to hold us, to keep us safe, because and we talk about this so much in the Confident Grief Coach School, right? We talk about the tribe and how we have a whole section on our training with our clients on this, because it is so important to have people there to support you. And not even just like a supportive husband or wife or, a family member or a best friend, but it's talking about this village, and it's talking about this collective way of living that has become so lost in our society, because now we live in a culture that is very individualized. We have all of these little homes that are separate from one another, and we're so busy that we
Hmm.
don't often connect or make space for this sacred
Right.
ritual and celebration. And so I've just been sitting with that, because it's like, wow, here we are. And I think these themes of this lack of a collective support system have really been coming up lately, because we're seeing these power structures dominating and dividing us and pulling us away from this mesh, this network, this this supportive cradling that as humans we are designed to expect and to receive. And when we don't get that, so much grief is living within us that we might feel as an ache or an emptiness or a hollowness or some kind of a hole that's missing, but we don't know what's missing.
And we don't
And
know what to do about it. I mean, that's, when you're talking about like what's going on in the world right now, in our backyards, in, the political climate and all of that. I'm not talking one way or the other. I think that it's a collective thing. And sometimes I just sit and think, so what action do I take? Who do I reach out to, knowing that everybody has kind of some individualistic views of everything? And how do we support it, each other and ourselves? It's very complicated, super
yeah.
complicated. And this is a little bit off track, but not. So last night, well, you know that I've lived in a multi-generational home for a long time, and that was, so I know the gifts and the challenges of being in a community. And it wasn't just family members. We had, my daughter-in-law's good friend was part of this collective and still is, like a grandmother to the kids here. My son and daughter-in-law, they're foster, and so they bring in all these, you know, kind of communal living for different people and that type of thing. So I get all that and know how important it is to have that. But I was talking to my daughter-in-law last night, and I have a type of grief, a hole. I'm not going to call it fear because I don't live in fear. That's not something that, it's just something that I don't personally get into. Um, but this whole AI thing that we
Mm,
have lost, we're losing the empathy. And then she was talking about how now AI can be trained to be empathetic, like for
mm,
physicians, and like actually take on the tone. And people are like connecting to a bot that has been trained to be empathetic. And I'm like, what does this mean for the human species?
mm,
Especially with everything that's going on in the world. What does this mean when you talk about the community, the collective stuff? Sorry, that just came, but it's like there's so much to wrap our arms around, and this is big grief. There's a lot of people that when you're on social media, I try not to get too immersed in it, because news and social media, because it would make me crazy. But I see the the feelings of just people are scared.
yeah.
They don't know who to
Mm.
turn to, or other people are just dismissing them. So, it's like, yeah, it's big.
And along that line, people are feeling so dismissed and feeling so alone that they're turning to robots for empathy. What is
Yeah,
that? Like,
I
that's
know.
insane. That like makes me so sad to think about, that we're surrounded by people. You can't go anywhere nowadays. You can't go to the store without running into someone. You can't be on the street Like, unless you're just like tucked away in the woods or in a cave, like, obviously we have people in our lives, and we even have friends and family that are in our lives that just don't know how to support each other.
Right.
And it's partially because we've lost that. We've lost that innate sense of tribe and village because we're so individualized and we're so distracted and we're so caught up in our own productivity that we don't have the time and space for these things that really are creating that sense of safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he speaks to, along the lines of fear as well, how so many of us live in this, in this culture and in this society now where we have all of these mental health challenges, physical health challenges, and that across the board, so many people have that sense of aloneness, especially in their grief, especially, even if they're surrounded by people that don't know how to support them, they feel alone and empty and hollow, and they don't necessarily know why. And he speaks to this idea of, when you finally have the support, when you finally have that need met of being wrapped with open arms in that unconditional love that we as humans biologically are expecting from our people, when we finally get that need met, how we just collapse, how we finally melt into that sense of safety that I can let my guard down. I don't have to be in fear anymore. I am
Right.
held, I'm supported. And now the trauma and the grief comes out and we're finally able to process and heal. But so many of us are just carrying all of that because we don't have that safe space to actually melt and to receive that support. So I think about like, oh my gosh, it just makes me want to cry because so many of us feel so alone because we're not receiving.
And people are going to TikTok. And I'm not bashing social media. I don't want people thinking, who are listening to us. But I know people that have gone to TikTok for their mental health support. They're going to an app for mental health support and diagnosing that self-diagnosing. And I'm like, the human touch, we
Mhm.
know. And I'm going to use, for example, I'm going to be doing a celebration of life tomorrow. And I met with the son and daughter of this individual. And they're so broken because it was an unexpected death that, that dad just, yeah, they found him asleep in his chair. And they needed to be held by me. They don't know
Mhm.
me from Adam, but I'm physically there to
Yeah.
be held, to hold them, like you said, so that they can melt into it. And it was just so evident because even the brother, he's like, no, and they just held on to me because that physical touch and empathy and love. And conversely, 2 weeks ago, I did a celebration of life, and I was just coming out of not even 2 weeks ago, that flu, right? And so
Mm.
I didn't meet with the family because I didn't want to be sick around them.
Mhm.
And it was such a different celebration of life service than the one that because I couldn't give fully because I
Mm.
was physically ill and I never got to meet with them and hug them until I actually did the service. And then it
Mm.
was like somewhere like not, I don't know that they felt held, others felt held, but it's such a different being a human being. And I do a lot of my stuff like this, like you do. We do it over Zoom and coaching and that type of thing, but we can still hold people through a
Mm.
gaze
Yeah.
with our energy. And when we have the ability to hold people so that they can, like you said, just melt into it and feel held is
Yeah.
so important. And I'm it's not fear, but I'm curious what is going to happen with all this artificial intelligence and that we're training it to be empathetic. What happens to people? What's it going to be like for my grandchildren? Are we going to be like Mad Max at Thunderdome? Kind of, that's what I was telling my daughter-in-law. Is our world creating this? I don't know, sci-fi.
Hmm.
How d- I think our job is to, like, as in the wild edge of sorrow, you and I having these conversations and going out and doing what we do, and supporting people in grief and training people to support people in grief. It's ours, one person at a time, that we need to show up and
Yeah.
remind people that we're human, we're pack animals. We need to support one another.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely been feeling that pull to get back to that sense of community. And you talk about what can we do then? What actions do we take to like, support this and to support ourselves and to support one another in healing and holding this grief? And I think a lot of that first is being present, setting aside your busy life for 5 minutes and feeling your grief, feeling the sorrow, feeling the emptiness, and leaning into that, because that is a cue from your body that is telling you that something's missing. So leaning into that, and this totally goes with my education and experience as a body worker. Craniosacral therapy is, first of all, was the number one most impactful thing on my healing journey from grief, because I finally had that safe touch where my body could release everything I was holding on to. But I just totally forgot where I was going with that now.
Well, the feeling into it, and that's number one. We first have to allow ourselves that time to
Yeah,
feel into it.
right. Yeah, and that the body doesn't do things by accident. So the fact that I was just talking with my partner who has been feeling this collective grief of not receiving that support from his family, and how he's grieving that they can't show up for him in the way that he needs, and he recognized that he's got this tension that he just is so stiff all the time, and he's working to like try to let go of that. And in our conversation I was offering a reframe on that, like instead of trying to let go of what you're recognizing that you need, you're trying to convince yourself you don't need this. How can you look for it in different places then? If you're not getting it in
Yes.
this place, where can you go? And that's now like, how do you take the action? What do we do to support this healing? And for me, it is very much, I'm creating a safe community space. I'm going to be that person that is here with open arms to just welcome you in and embrace you no matter who you are, because I unconditionally love you. And I don't care what labels or what titles you have. Like,
Right.
you know that when you come to this space, all of you is welcome here. All of your grief, all of your sorrow, all of your pains, and let's sit and let's be with it, and let's have that safe container to melt, to just feel and to be present with it, and to practice sitting with it and integrating it and digesting it and releasing the things, that stiffness, that tension that is just so bottled, that
Right.
just wants to be, it wants out, but it can't get out if we don't give it a safe space. And that's what the wild edge of sorrow is talking about, is we're waiting for that tribe and we're waiting for that village to show up for us. And when we finally get that, that's when we can finally let go and release and melt into that sense of safety where we can fully experience our grief.
And then once we're able to fully experience it because it's necessary, it's real, then we can go in and say, okay, let me reframe this. Let me maybe take an action. I mean, that's what we're doing as coaches, right? But we can't just go into action. We
Mhm.
have to have awareness. And I always say that, right? Coaching is 50% awareness, 50% action. The awareness is that leaning in, that safety, that melting in and allowing us to feel those feels and not feel diminished or dismissed because
Yeah.
we're feeling that. Because once we're able to integrate that, feel it in our body, release it from the body, because our body is our temperature check, right? We know, you know, as a body worker, I know in my own body, this is where I hold it. It's going to be my flag. And once we release it, then we can go, okay, this is where I would like to move forward. Where a
Yeah.
lot of people stay stuck because they don't have the tribe, they don't have the community, the village supporting them. And I agree with you. That's who you and I are. That's what we do. individually and collectively. That's why we do what we do in the Confident Grief Coach School. That's why, you and I are working on getting retreats put together, more trainings for people, workshops, just so that people can feel held. That's why I do my celebrant work. That's why you're going to be a culinary expert in healing foods, right? And nurturing and nutrition. That's why we do what we do, is because we know that it's so much bigger, but it is the village. We can't do this shit alone.
Mhm.
But we try. And then, like I was saying, visiting with my daughter-in-law last night, that's my concern of going into such a level of artificiality. Is that a word? Right?
Mhm.
Intelligence. Oh my gosh. It's like we then are taking away that humanistic approach. And I
Yeah.
think we have to be the ones to save it. We have to
Yeah.
be the saviors of this and not
Yes.
allow the pendulum to swing. Is there great things with AI and intelligence and different things? Absolutely. I mean, we know that there's some super cool things there. But I'm going to tell you what, I don't want my doctor to be TikTok.
Yeah.
When I go in, I want to be able to, I don't want my coach to be TikTok.
No.
I want someone that, like you, to talk to and feel heard, held, and honored.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. That's what's missing. That's what's missing. And that's why we do what we do, because we see it and we see it, when you can offer that space for someone, when someone comes to see me for cranial sacral, when we do a coaching session, even if it's virtually, how that offers that safety that people need and that time and space, that presence, like you're talking about, that awareness to sit with all that is here, and how that just creates this magical space for the fear to go out the door, and for that love and that safety to come in, and for that comfort, and for that soothing time and space that we all need as humans to come
Yeah.
forward and heal the world from each one person, one interaction at a time. And it's so cool to see that unfold with the people that we work with. That's where I'm holding on to hope. Like that's
Yep.
where, if we can just spread that and ripple that into the world more and more, like that's going to support people so that they don't feel the need to turn to social media when they're having, some grief come up. That they have
Right.
people that are actually going to hold them and support them through these challenges.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to be pondering this now all weekend because it started last night, not knowing we were going to have this conversation that where do we put our stake into the ground? Where do we put our flag into the ground? And to me, it's not a political statement. This is a humanistic statement.
Yeah.
This is, I am here to do this work. You're here to do this work. The more of us that start gathering together and creating a village, right? Because we are one big village anyway,
Yeah.
worldwide. But the more that we all align with our village
Yeah.
and spread that, that's where we create the change. That's the stuff that I believe I can have an impact in
Yeah.
and on and for, right? And yeah, so I know that for those of you who are listening, Cami and I are very passionate, as you can tell. We do these videos not to do anything more, but to create the village, to create the tribe, to support people. And if this is helpful for you at all, number one, we'd like you to comment and share what you're doing or how maybe you would like to join us in this, and like and subscribe on our channel, because that way at least it's getting, there we are in AI. We do have
Mhm.
algorithms. We have all that kind of stuff. And like I said, there are some good things with that because it can get out to more people to be noted.
Mhm.
We're not looking to be famous. We just want to we want to have our flag in the ground so that people can come to the flag pole and, create this community of support and love and healing and health.
Yeah. Yeah, to send those ripples out, to our community, to anybody who's resonating with this message and who has just heard something that might have shifted some energy or some type of grief within you. I would love to hear about this because I know that these conversations and exploring these topics is so important for me in my process. Otherwise, I just get so bogged down by just all of the
Yep.
energy in the world. But yeah, if you're listening and this touched something within you, I would love to hear what came up for you, and if you know someone that might need to hear this, to share that with them as well, because yeah, we're all about sending those ripples of love into the world. So yeah, also to think about like what can you do today that might establish a sense of community, inner safety, kindness with yourself, and then being able to share that and offer that to other people in your life as well. So just something to ponder for your weekend.
So what are you going to do today? What is your one thing?
Oh,
I
my
put you on the
one
spot. Sorry.
Yeah, you did. Well, this was my one thing. I don't know. I've just been
Yeah.
integrating this message has been really hitting home with me and is driving the action that I'm taking in my life to build this healing center in the woods.
Yep.
That's really that reading that passage in that book was like, oh, this is why I'm doing
This
this.
is why you're doing this. And it's no, what do I want to say? The meaning was there. You were supposed to be reading this passage because you have been in this transition of, okay, how do I create this vision that you have been creating? And that is so beautiful. I'm going to finish writing up a service for a funeral celebration of life tomorrow because that is my one thing that I know that just having that and tapping into the loved one who died and feeling all the family and
Yeah.
playing the music that we're going to play brings me into that space that I know that I can be totally present and create a community of love for this family who is pretty sad right now. So that's my thing.
It's beautiful.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for listening. We look forward. Please comment and, share with others if you think that it is, and like and subscribe because we would love to hang out with you more.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for the conversation, Pat.
You too. Bye bye.